And good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Courtney Yockey, and I'm with the F&M Regional Growth Alliance, and here today representing the Business Navigator Alliance of South Central and Southeastern Illinois. We have an excellent presentation stored for you this morning. A variety of the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities, or DCO, if you will, a variety of their business programs have seen recent legislation changes that are aimed to help businesses with access to capital and assist them in expanding their workforce and spur startup activity. We're going to review some of these programs today and have an excellent panel with us this morning to guide us through this discussion. So starting off, we have Sean Pritchard with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities Office of Business Development. Sean's going to touch on the Advantage Illinois program and the state small business credit initiative. Following Sean, we have Kayla Lambert with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities Office of Regional Economic Development. And Kayla's going to touch on a variety of programs, including EDGE, REV, Micro, Enterprise Zones, and High Impact Businesses. And then myself, Courtney Yockey with the F&M Regional Growth Alliance, I'm going to speak towards the recent grant opportunities that the state has released that are geared towards restaurants, hotels, and the creative arts industries. So to begin, what is the Business Navigator Alliance of South Central and Southeastern Illinois? We are a 6-county regional collaboration working through the Small Business Community Navigator Grant. This collaboration includes Angela Griffin from the Coals Together, Lori Miner from the Sullivan, Illinois Chamber and Economic Development, Risa Schreiner from the Crawford County Development Association, Nora Swalls from the Marshall Area Chamber of Commerce, Bob Colvin and Freddie Schmitty from the Paris Economic Development Corporation, and then again myself, Courtney Yockey with the F&M Regional Growth Alliance. This group is charged with professional outreach and technical assistance for local, state, and federal programs. Our mission is to ensure that small businesses in our region are competitive and applying for necessary resources. And our goal is to position you for success by accelerating business recovery and growth. If you see to the side of your screen, you can see where the Business Navigator Alliance is located. Today's webinar is part of a series of webinars that we host each month. These webinars are hosted on the last Thursday of each month. Please visit IL Business Navigators, that's Navigators with an S, to join our newsletter and to keep update on future webinars and to be able to review past webinars as well. In addition to these webinars, we also hold outreach events. We offer virtual office hours and one-on-one technical assistance applying for local, state, and federal programs. Again, please visit www.ilbusinessnavigators.com to sign up for our newsletter to stay informed and to see the recordings from today's presentation, along with past webinars as well. Starting off today, we have Sean Pritchard. Sean is currently the Assistant Deputy Director of Business Development and joined the state in February of 2020. Sean oversees Advantage Illinois. He also oversees multiple state-sponsored and ran programs. Prior to joining the state, Sean worked with a large nationwide insurance company in their internal audit division, where he oversaw special projects, as well as the information technology process improvement functions. Sean also spent time at PNC Bank and Barnes & Nobles as the Community Business Development Manager. Sean has multiple designations and certifications, including a CHFI, which is a Certified Hacking Forensic Investigator, an ASRI is Associate with the Secure Retirement Institute, an ACS, which is Associate Customer Service, an ALMI, which is Associate from the Life Management Institute, along with certifications in cyber risk management in a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Sean, are you prepared to present today, sir?
I am, Courtney. Thank you for the introduction and good morning, everyone. Courtney, can you hear me okay? Am I coming through clear?
Hear you just fine. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Yep, and again, thank you for the introduction. Happy to be here today, talking to you all about kind of access to capital. As Courtney mentioned, and kind of like his opening remarks and opening statement, that I'm going to talk about our Advantage Illinois program, as well as what we call SSBCI. SSBCI, it stands for the State Small Business Credit Initiative. We actually got our first round of funding back in 2010 to 2012. It's a federally ran program. All states basically got an allocation, and we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the history of it, kind of what happened once the federal government turned it over to us at the state level, and then where we are today. So with that being said, Courtney, can you go to the next slide, please? All right, so when we talk about Advantage Illinois, this is what we call a participation loan program, or a PLP, and it helps Illinois businesses get term loan financing at lower rates. We do that by purchasing a portion of the loan, which in turn lowers the risk for our lenders or our banking partners. The goal for this Advantage Illinois program is to help those businesses grow, expand, and create new jobs in Illinois at a faster rate, Additionally, it really is all about that access to capital. We want to make sure that businesses that are having a difficult time getting a loan by themselves, that they're able to take part of this program to get that equitable basis, to allow them the funding needed to expand, to have their dreams come true essentially with that business. So Courtney, next slide, please. All right, so when we talk about Advantage Illinois, again, it really is designed to help businesses that cannot get loans by themselves to obtain this financing. So a lot of times where we fill in those gaps is by collateral and or equity shortfalls, lack of historical cash flow. Basically a startup company, you're not able to show like historical cash flow, which banks, lending partners really want to see. They want to see how you've been able to operate your business, what's the pro formas, what's the analysis, what's the incomes. So if you're a startup business, you don't have that. So we can really help in that realm or with those types of businesses. We see a lot of businesses that come in with low credit scores, as well as negative net worth. Negative net worth could be due to student loans. It could be due to you had to put a lot of money into your own business out of your own pocket during the COVID pandemic, which is now unfortunately impacting you. Maybe you had to overextend and take a second mortgage out to add a rooftop seating area in your bar or restaurant. So again, we do see a lot of those four categories is what we see most common and most frequently. Additionally, these Advantage Illinois loans, they can be used for real estate purchases. However, they must be 51% or more occupied by the business. They can be used for inventory purchases, working capital, equipment, leasehold improvement, and accounts receivable, just to name a few. Additionally, refinancing is allowed with a few caveats. When we talk about a refinance, so if you're coming to us and you say, hey, I've got this $100,000 loan that I took out with Bank A, I really need some more money, I need to get some equipment. We could look at refinancing that loan that you have with Bank A, but unrelated lender means that we have to use a different bank. So we have over 50 banks enrolled and approved to offer these loans in this program. So hopefully, we have a lot of options. Additionally, we do accept new applications for banks on a rolling basis. So if you already have a connection with someone, you already have your deposit accounts at a bank, you are more than welcome to make that introduction. And our team here will talk to them about signing them up for this program as well. But on top of it being an unrelated lender, we do have to have new financing included and new jobs must be created or retained. So quickly, using that $100,000 example of a refinance, if you said, hey team, we really need to refinance this $100,000 debt, I need to buy that working capital. Okay, well, there's new financing. And then are you going to create any new jobs? Or by doing this loan, is that allowing you to retain some? So we will work with you throughout that process. We'll make that very easy to understand, to navigate around. But again, refinancing just does have a few caveats there. Next slide, please. All right, so here's a few of the benefits. For the businesses, it's the access to financing. And additionally, it's the lower rates. We're going to talk about that in an upcoming slide, but the access to financing is huge. Especially when you kind of think about how many businesses, even during the COVID-19 pandemic, struggled, whether it was due to shutdowns or executive orders, or just in general with the way everything was playing out. Access to financing, being able to get a loan with a bank to add a drive-through service to your restaurant, to hire another teacher for your daycare, because daycares really had a lot of concerns and issues during the COVID pandemic. So this is just one of the benefits that goes into businesses. The benefits to our lending partners is this program allows them to do more loan volume with less risk. And then for us at the state level, it's the economy growth and it's that job creation and retention piece. So just a few pieces of important information with this program is Advantage Illinois participation is subordinate to the bank. What that essentially means is that, and it's more of a benefit for our lending partners, but that if we're going into a loan with them and something happens to the business where they default, they go under, unfortunately they go bankrupt, that the bank gets first shot at recouping as much money as they can before we see a penny at the state. By us being subordinate, this is allowing those banks to be less conservative, to allow that access to financing be a little bit more open and to be a little bit more equitable. Important is that there are no Advantage Illinois term loan fees for the borrower or the lender. SBA is a great program. SBA has a lot of paperwork and does have some fees there. This program is completely free to use for our term loan programs. Caveat is lenders can still charge their normal fees. Some lenders may have like a loan closing fee, loan application fee. They can still charge those, except you're just not going to get any fees from the state of Illinois. Our documentation and application process is short and simple. We actually don't have a separate application for our borrowers in this program. We rely on the write-up that's provided from our banking partners. The only document that the borrowers need to fill out from us is what we call an ITR1. It's actually at the bottom right of the screen. An ITR1 is a document that once it's filled out, we send it to the Illinois Department of Revenue to make sure that the business owner or owners and the business do not owe any back taxes to the state. That is really essentially the only document that these borrowers fill out with us to take part of this program. Courtney, if you'll go to the next slide for me, please. All right, so Advantage Illinois, obviously, we do have some not eligible categories. So I'm just going to take a moment to go over those. So unfortunately, at this time, we cannot do nonprofits. We are looking at trying to see about how to assist and do nonprofits going forward. But again, unfortunately, at this point in time, we just can't do those. Unfortunately, we cannot do cannabis. We do have other programs at DCEO for cannabis. Just because we rely so heavily on our banking partners, cannabis still is federally illegal. Obviously, there's some issues there. So we cannot do cannabis program through this Advantage Illinois. We cannot do investment real estate, tobacco, which would be like your wholesale growing, interstate commerce of tobacco. We just can't do those types of industries. We cannot do goodwill related to change in ownership, the adult entertainment or the gambling industry. I'm going to talk about gambling in a second, but lastly, if a borrower or borrowers and the business have had a bankruptcy, a judgment, or a lien in the past 5 years, unfortunately, we're not able to help until that 5-year timeframe has eclipsed. And then just really quickly on gambling, when we talk about not eligible, we're talking about more commerce provided by gambling. What I mean by that is we can't do casinos, but if you have a restaurant or you have a convenience store and you are adding one of the gaming machines in, we can look at helping with that project still. So if you have something gambling related, let's talk about those kind of one-off, just because again, it's more case by case scenario. And then Courtney, next slide, please. All right, I'm gonna go over this slide kind of quickly. When we think about Advantage Illinois, essentially there's really two versions of it. We have our standard Advantage Illinois, and then we have what we call FAME. FAME is F-A-M-E, and it stands for the Fund for the Advancement of Minority Enterprises. And that includes minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, as well as disabled-owned businesses. So when you're looking at this screen here, this is showing how much money we can participate on a given project. It shows that our maximum term length is 10 years for standard, 7 years for FAME. We can amortize a loan, so that's more of the finance, the back end of the banking aspect of it. But I want to spend a little bit of time just on the rate aspect. So for our consumers, for our borrowers, the rate is the biggest aspect for all of you. When we look at standard, our interest rate is fixed at 2 percentage points below the bank. So what that means is if the bank says that the interest rate is 6%, then we're going to be at 4%. So that's just, again, giving you a little bit of interest rate breakage, making your money go a little bit further. You're paying less each month in interest and less over the life of the loan in interest. So it's making your money go further. When we look at FAME, though, our rate is fixed at 2% regardless of the bank. As I'm sure most people are aware, we've obviously had some issues in the banking realm with SVB, just other things in general. Rates constantly fluctuate. In some cases, we're at all-time highs with rates. So with this program, being able to offer it at 2% flat is incredibly attractive. And for you, it will make your money go extremely far. So if a bank comes in and says their interest rate's 8%, we're at 2%. That's going to be what we call a blended rate or a note rate. It's just going to be very beneficial. And then lastly, we do have a job creation or retention aspect to it. So for standard, for each $50,000 that DCO that we participate in, one full-time job should be created or retained in the next 2 years. We look at FAME, it's for each $65,000 that we participate, one full-time job should be created or retained in the next 2 years. Courtney, next slide, please. Okay, so for this slide, what I really wanted to show all of you today is what we just spent time talking about is what we call SSBCI 1.0. Quick overview, 2010, President Obama signed in SSBCI, again, State Small Business Credit Initiative, where he gave Illinois, or the federal government gave Illinois over $78 million. So we lent out all $78 million plus. In 2015, federal government came in, they did kind of a quote unquote audit. They said, hey, Illinois, you did great. Do you want to keep this program going? If so, we'll turn the money over to you and it'll go from federal to state. So since 2015, we've been operating, just doing these loans, constantly trying to get out and help businesses where we can. Fast forward a little bit longer, 2021, President Biden signs into order the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or ARPA. Within ARPA, it had SSBCI 2.0. I'm sorry, I know I'm a lot of acronyms here. But for SSBCI 2.0, Illinois is slated to receive over $354 million. That money is going to be divided up into 4 programs. One of them is going to be very similar to what we just spent time talking about, a participating loan program. Another program that we're going to be investing in is what we call a loan guarantee program, or LGP. That program is very similar to what we just went over, with the difference being rather than participating or giving a piece of a loan, we're coming in and guaranteeing an X amount or percentage, saying that if that loan goes in default, we'll then give the bank that money. That's obviously going to really help you all out as borrowers, as consumers, because it gives you another funding source. It gives you another opportunity for access to capital to make those dreams a reality. A couple other programs that we're implementing is a venture capital program. And then lastly, we are working with the Illinois Finance Authority, or IFA, on something that we're calling Climate Bank. So within IFA, they are going to be doing participating loans directed in like the clean energy sector. So renewable energy, wind, solar, that type of thing. So we have 4 options here of a lot of money to really kind of come in, help make a difference, get in the community, work with the small businesses, and just really see where that need is. So again, I know we spent time talking about Advantage Illinois 1.0, but a lot of the same principles and what I went over are going to be the same for SSBCI 2.0. At the state level, we are still implementing. We're still dotting the I's, crossing the T's, just buttoning everything up to basically go live, which we're hoping to do very shortly. So I wanted to spend today to talk about what we already have currently in real time, that we still have the ability and the tools to assist, but also we have quote unquote reinforcements coming of just way more funding opportunities to be able to help, again, the small businesses. The other update I wanted to give is staffing. So with this program, we had 1 full-time staff person on board. With just the amount of loans that we've been able to do going back to 2019, 2020, with the $354 million cash injection from the state or from the federal government, we have added 2 new members to our team. We have added a college intern, and I'm actually wrapping up today interviews for 2 positions in Chicago. So in a matter of 2 months, we went from 1 person to 5. So what this means is more boots on the ground, more opportunities for us to come to the community, to do presentations like this, either virtually or in person, to meet with our local lenders down there to either work with them on this program for knowledge or training, or to really work with signing new banks and new lenders up to offer these programs. So we're very excited about that, especially with the staffing. Again, going from 1 to 5 is pretty exciting for us. And then lastly, projects. We continue to grow and have success in this program. In calendar year 2021, we did a total of 51 loans. Out of those 51, 43 of them qualified for FAME. So again, those were the minority, veteran, disabled, and women-owned businesses. But for calendar year 2022, we broke all of our state records in terms of loans, and we went from 51 loans to 95. And we went from 43 qualified FAME applicants to 67. So the momentum is going with this program, and so we couldn't be getting those reinforcements, as I said, at a better time. So more money, more opportunities. Again, just can't stress this enough, for us to be able to work with all of you if you have projects, if you have needs, if you're looking to expand, if you're looking to start up, if you have banks that you work with and you think they'd be a great fit for this program, send them my way, send them our way. We will be happy to talk to them, and just really happy to show the benefits of being in a program like this. And then one more slide here. Courtney, if you could just go to that quickly, please. Okay, so I mentioned that we have an intern and we'll have 2 new positions in Chicago. But currently this is the team on paper. Obviously myself, Sean Pritchard, Mark Schultz, Bob Owens, and Dwayne Walker are all out with me based out of our Springfield office. And then you'll see we have an email address listed, ceo.advantageillinois@illinois.gov. That is by far the best way to get in touch with us, because not only does this email go to me, but it goes to those 3 names I just mentioned, as well as Lamine, who is our intern, as well as once we get the 2 new employees hired in Chicago, they will also receive these emails. So this will allow, that team aspect, that team approach. So if you have questions, we will try to get with you as soon as possible via email. If we have to schedule a call, if you're requesting us to come to a presentation, again, virtually in person, we'll work with you through those details through that. But with that, I definitely want to just kind of bring it back home or close it with, again, the program that I just talked about is a great program. It, for a while, was one of our state's kind of hidden secrets. It was really operating by word of mouth, and that's something our team has worked very hard on trying to change, including working with folks like Kayla and that regional economic development team, Red. Kayla's instrumental trying to help push more Advantage Illinois conversations down in your region. So really definitely want to give a shout out to Kayla. But Bob is in the office with me today. But we're just very excited to work with you all. Again, whether you're a lending partner, whether you know of a lender, or whether you're a business that just needs that assistance, doors are open. We are happy to talk, happy to answer questions, happy to talk out scenarios with you if you just kind of want to understand the program a little better. I'm a fast talker. I know I talk fast. I wanted to make sure I covered a lot in this 15 minutes with, again, the expectation that if you have questions that we cannot answer in the Q&A session this afternoon, or again, just reach out to us directly and we'll be happy to work with you, or at least try to give you some of those details or answers that you are seeking. With that, Courtney, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Excellent presentation. Thank you for educating us today on the existing program for the Advantage Illinois, and appreciate you identifying the advantages there for all parties, both the business and the lender, and good to hear the growth that is coming through this as you guys continue to push this out and have additional outreach and technical assistance in this. And much appreciate you diving into the SSBCI as well and letting us know what is coming. So excellent presentation, much appreciated. If you would, and either you or I know Robert's on here with you as well, if somebody in the can put that ceo.advantageillinois@illinois.gov in the chat, that is the clearinghouse, if you will, the email address to reach this team. I know we did have a question in the chat about contact info, so if you'll throw it in there, please do. And just a reminder to everybody that's with us this morning, there will be a copy of there will be a link sent out for the recording of this presentation today, and then we'll send a copy of this PowerPoint as well. So you will get a copy of these slides. And They can also be found at ilbusinessnavigators.com under our business webinar series webpage. But again, Sean, thank you for the presentation and way to get us started off at a excellent start today. To continue
Thank you. And
go ahead.
I did put that email in the chat. So if anybody, just let me know if you can't see that or have any issues accessing that. And I'll definitely put it in there again. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. And continuing this momentum, we have Kayla Lambert. Kayla serves as the Southeast Regional Economic Development Manager for the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, providing free and confidential services to companies seeking to expand or relocate within Illinois with services such as tax credits based on job creation and retention, potential financial support, and providing instructions or introductions to other agencies as needed, and much more. Additionally, she works with stakeholders and leaders throughout the state and specifically in the Southeast region with an interest in economic development, connecting them with the latest programs and opportunities available through DCO. Prior to this role, she spent 12 years in municipal government administration, 6 of which were spent in economic development. Through her experience, she served as airport, tourism, GATA, TIF and enterprise zone administrator, driving local economic development efforts and assisting businesses with incentives to expand and create jobs. In her current role, she most enjoys identifying programs and incentives to assist local units of government and businesses to thrive in Illinois. She holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from McKendree College. Kayla is also part of the Business Navigator Alliance. We definitely rely on her a lot and very thankful to have her as our connection to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, and very excited about her presenting today. Kayla, are you prepared to present?
I am, Courtney. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for that introduction. So what I'm going to cover today is the most recent changes to legislation that have impacted some of our most popular business development programs. And that was made possible by Public Act 102-1112, as you can see here. And that was passed and signed back in December, as well as Public Act 102-1125 that was passed in the lame duck session and signed this last month in February. And so if you want to read up on those, you can Google those public acts and you can see those changes there. But a lot of these changes were made by listening to feedback from those in the field who are trying to attract businesses, retain companies in the respective regions, and listening to stakeholders throughout the state. So we're really excited to be able to get some of those changes made for the better and to help continue to spur more growth and opportunities within the state. So the programs that I'm going to talk about today, as Courtney said, are REV, EDGE, Micro, HIB, and Enterprise Zone. And I'm going to get into what all those acronyms mean as we get along in the presentation. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Courtney. So I'll start with the updates to EDGE, which first off, it stands for Economic Development for a Growing Economy. And one of the main benefits of EDGE, it allows for a tax credit of income tax withholdings of retained and new employees related to a project. So assuming that a company is not coming in as a startup company, they will collect taxes from the new employees. They'll remit those to the state, and then they'll apply for a tax credit equal to the eligible amount available. And they use this to offset against their Illinois corporate income tax liability. And this is a 10-year tax credit. So recent legislation has provided several updates to that program, including the requirements regarding a blown but-for. And so when companies are applying, they're no longer required to provide a full cost differential analysis of their out-of-state option, which was a very cumbersome process. And so they're not required to do that as when they're applying for the tax credit. They just simply need to attest that without the tax credit, that the project would locate elsewhere. And that's going to satisfy the requirement in legislation. And it also changes, what may constitute a blown but-for. And so to further define what we're talking about when we say but-for, it's really just cause and effect. So the project would not happen but for or without the incentive, and that's per the legislation. So when the state is doing, just furthering on this, when the state's doing their due diligence to determine if a company is able to receive this tax credit with the state, we're looking to make sure they don't owe any taxes. We're also looking to determine that they've not, violated or blown the but-for. And so we kind of have a list of what those actions might be that would blow a but-for. And with this recent legislation change, we've also been able to update that list. So making it, I guess, more flexible for the company and maybe their due diligence that they may be needing to do to prepare for, whether to locate in Illinois or somewhere else. But just with that in mind, actions like holding a ribbon cutting or a groundbreaking, saying that you are locating Illinois, that's still going to violate the but-for, because in the eyes of the state, if you're already making an action like that, then you don't need the credit. So we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that those who are eligible are receiving the credit. Another example might be if you, for instance, are signing a lease or purchasing a property or making a contract to purchase a property without including, some sort of clause or contingency clause that you have applied for the edge tax credit, and that would be part of the contingency clause in that agreement. Another exciting update is that it increases the availability of claiming the credit for retained employees. So previously, you could only get credit for retained employees if you were located in an underserved area. Now that is available statewide for up to a 25% credit of those withholdings. And then it increased it if you are in a retained area to 50% of the withholdings of retained employees. This is also, there was also some clarification lastly on EDGE that clarified the 5-year termination clause. So basically, if a company is not able to make the investment and create the jobs within 5 years, then the agreement is terminated. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next program, REV. And first off, that used to stand for Reimagining Electric Vehicles. And now the acronym remains the same, REV, but since the program has expanded, the changed name is now Reimagining Energy and Vehicles. So this program exists to allow companies to expand and locate in Illinois, attracting those who would be making investments in clean energy, electric vehicles, and the component parts for electric vehicles, and providing incentives for companies to make those investments. So one of the benefits of the programs is the, sorry about that. One of the benefits of the programs is, again, a tax credit, but it's a little different. So with REV, you actually, it is calculated again on the income tax or the W-2 withholdings for retained and new employees with the result of the qualifying investment. But with REV, the companies actually get to keep the amount of the withholdings that they're eligible for. And so it could can be considered essentially a grant. So they are receiving those monies quicker. There's also 2 tiers within REV for a company to be eligible. And the new changes reduce the minimum capital investment in tier 1 from $20 million to now it's just $2.5 million. Additionally, it reduced the minimum job creation threshold. So it used to be 50 new jobs to be eligible, and now it's the lesser of 50 new jobs or 10% of a company's worldwide employment. So if a company's worldwide employment is 250, they would now be eligible for the program with the creation of just 25 new jobs and making the investment of $2.5 million. This also expands, like I'd mentioned earlier, it expands the targeted businesses who would be eligible by allowing manufacturers of solar, renewables, energy, and storage components. Next slide to continue on. So also, new changes provide an updated definition of component part manufacturers. And what that did was it removed the need for component part manufacturers to primarily produce EV component parts. And it allows for any component part of an electric vehicle to be eligible. So in the past, it was only for component parts that were parts of the electrification of the vehicle. And now that is expanded. So you can see how removing that word primary really expands opportunities there. So for instance, maybe a company produces headlights for the automotive industry. And now, with the increase of electric vehicle production, they may be making those parts for EV manufacturers or need to make improvements to their facility to be able to make headlights for the EV industry. So therefore, this may be a program to help offset some of those costs and those investments that would be needed. Additionally, with regard to retained employees, the word substantially was removed. So I talked about earlier with the retained employees, this is another opportunity to really support our existing workforce and to help companies that are here in Illinois, not just attracting new companies. But what changed there was the word substantially was removed. So now companies can receive tax credits for the retained employees whose job duties are directly related to the project, opposed to directly and substantially related to the project. So moving on with the updates on the next slide, Courtney. So keeping with the changes in retained employees, there was an increase in the credits allowed. So it's 75 statewide, and it's 100% in an underserved or an energy transition area. And that's for the retained employees. Also, recent legislation changed the term amounts. So now, again, I mentioned there's 2 tiers. There's tier 1 and there's tier 2. Those agreements can now be for 20 years and 30 years, respectively, in tier 1 and tier 2. We also allow for the transition if a company, maybe is currently in an EDGE agreement, they can transition to a REV if that would benefit the company now, because this program is now available. And lastly, with regard to REV, one of the requirements of the program is that the wages of the new employees paid must be at least 120% of the average county wage for that respective job title. Before the recent legislation, you could only obtain that data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And now you can use Illinois Department of Employment Security data as well. So moving on to micro. Micro is very similar to REV. It actually mirrors it, except for micro, which stands for Manufacturing Illinois Chips for Real Opportunity. In the intent of this program is to attract companies in the microchips and the semiconductor space and then the component parts of those. So the changes that were made was the increased value of the tax credit for retained employees. And now that's 75% for retained employees, and it's 100% for the retained or new employees. Like Rev, the change was also made where you can use either BLS data or IDES data. Moving on to the next slide, Courtney. So last but not least, I'll talk about enterprise zones and HIB. I think enterprise zone is one of my favorite programs for business attraction and retention. The recent changes there was that currently you can only have, well, depending on how you come in and how your enterprise zone is made up, it could be, you know, depending on if you have multiple units of government, a single use of government, depending on the number of counties you have, the legislation provides the maximum amount of square miles that can be in an enterprise zone. So previously it was 12, 13, and 15 square miles in those different categories. And that increases the size now with recent legislation to 14, 16, and 20 square miles. And so, you know, I think that's really great that we made that change. I think that there's 97 maybe enterprise zones in the state. Don't quote me on that. And right now, you know, someone is not able to come in and apply for a new zone, but they could maybe expand off of an existing zone. With this recent legislation, there's, you know, more square miles that could be available. So if, you know, if a zone now they're at 12 square miles and that is the maximum, now they are actually able to, you know, maybe if there's an opportunity in their community or a nearby community that they're looking to expand the zone to, they would now be able to do that because there are new square miles available. And then last, under the high impact business program, the but-for requirements were also modernized in that program. And so, you know, companies who would be eligible for high impact business, and that's going to be companies that are locating, meeting the minimum job creation investment requirements, but not locating within an enterprise zone. So the no zone is there or available and nearby. They could come in as a high impact business, and they don't have to provide that out-of-state cost analysis as part of that process, because that was removed. And just to give you an idea, high impact business is 12 million in the creation of 500 new jobs, or $30 million investment in the retention of 1,500 full-time jobs to be eligible for a high impact business. It also, I didn't mention this, sorry, it also renews or not renews, but it allows companies to seek a renewal of the benefit. So initially it's a term of 20 years, and they have an option to renew for another 20 years. So though I know I threw a lot of updates to you and a lot of changes that were made. As you can see, you know, a lot of great changes. We're really excited about them, and we feel like that they are going to bring in a lot of new opportunities, and they have brought in a lot of new opportunities in just the short time that they've been enacted. So, any questions on that?
Awesome. Great presentation, Kayla. Much appreciate that. A lot of wonderful and great changes to a variety of different programs to help spur economic opportunity here in the state of Illinois, to help our existing businesses or potentially new ones that may come to the area. So thank you for running us through those updates. I know it was a lot to cover, and you did it quite well. If you have any questions on any of those programs, have a question for Kayla or even a question for Sean previously, please throw them in the chat. We're going to continue on. I've got a presentation on the Back to Business grants that just released last week, but we may hit that 1 hour timeline. We'll continue on most certainly. Do want to give an opportunity for the Q&A section. If you're not able to stay with us, this will be recorded. We hope that you can and have that opportunity to ask questions on your own too. But do stick with us and continuing on with the presentation. So as noted, last week, the state of Illinois announced $175 million in available grant funding through the Back to Business program. These funds are to provide additional support for restaurants, hotels, and creative art businesses. And we're going to do a review of these 3 programs, which include the Restaurant Employment Stabilization Grant, the Hotel Jobs Grant, or Hotel Jobs Recovery Grant, and the Creative Recovery Grant, which is creative arts. So today I intend to touch on what are the Back to Business programs and look at that program design. And then we're going to review the 3 programs. One thing that's very important to note here is that the applications open on April 5th. So that'll be next week. And then they will close at 11:59 p.m. on May 10th. It's an online application. Once the portal opens, if you do some quick math there, you've got 5 weeks to apply. Now, most certainly, we do encourage you to educate yourself on these programs sooner than later, and then to apply sooner than later as well, closer to that April 5th deadline. There is not a timestamp on your application from the means of those that apply earlier than later have more of a preference. It's based off of eligibility. You just have to be able to submit your application and all the requirements to those applications with the test and the various things are documents that are included prior to the deadline, but we recognize that something always comes up. So encourage you to start that process sooner than later. So to start, these programs are in support of ongoing recovery efforts in industries hit hardest by the pandemic. Just to reiterate, it is $175 million for restaurants, hotels, and creative art businesses. And these programs are designed to offset the losses that were incurred during the pandemic and then to support job retention. All eligible applicants will receive a grant as long as the business meets eligibility requirements and submits proper documents and attestations. So definitely note that, very important. All eligible applicants will receive a grant. And this program is funded by the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA for short, and allocated to the state's Cure Fund and appropriated by Public Act 102-0699. To run through these programs and how that $175 million breaks out, it's $50 million for the Restaurant Employment Stabilization Grant Program, $75 million for the Hotel Jobs Recovery Grant Program, and $50 million for the Illinois Creative Recovery Recovery Grant Program. We're going to dive into each of these programs just here shortly, but do want to outline that the B2B arts and the B2B restaurant grants, those award amounts will be determined by revenue declines as reflected on the tax returns. And funding for the hotels will be allocated by the number of rooms. So there are a lot of overlap between these programs. They are 3 individual independent programs, but there are some differences as well. So to start, for the B2B restaurants, this program will provide grants ranging from $5,000 to $50,000 to restaurants with 50 or fewer employees, and designed to support businesses that have not yet received substantial relief from other state and local grant programs during the pandemic. To be eligible, you must be independently owned and operated for-profit corporation or limited liability corporation, partnership, or sole proprietorship authorized to conduct business in the state of Illinois, or a nonprofit operation in Illinois and registered as a 501c organization. Now, this is a similar requirement for the other programs, but definitely wanted to get that definition out to you. And then similar to the other programs as well, you must have begun operations prior to March 12, 2020, and maintain active operations in Illinois at the time of application. So very important. This is not for businesses that had started after March 12th. You must have been in business prior to that March 12th, 2020 deadline. And then for the best B2B restaurants, you must have experienced a loss in earned or contributed revenue of at least $5,000 due to economic disruptions related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And to show that, you will submit your 2019 tax returns, 2020 and 2021 as well, comparing those gross receipts from 2019 to 2020 and 2021. And then you must have 50 or fewer employees at the time of application. Now, that 50 or fewer employees does not look at what you would say as FTE or full-time equivalent, effectively, depending on the number of hours worked, that you could say 2 part-time employees equal 1. They look at total headcount. So you must have 50 or fewer employees at the time of application. And you must have not received financial assistance from the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, or RRF, the Illinois Back to Business grants, the B2B grants that were just about a year and a half ago, the Illinois Business Interruption Grants, or BIG as commonly known, the Illinois Emergency Hospitality Grants, or more than 10,000 in grants or loan forgiveness from any local relief program for small businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then businesses, and important here, noted that we covered quite a little bit for state and local funding, but businesses who receive federal funds, such as the PPP, you are eligible to apply. So if you did not receive previous state funds or local funds, at least equating to that 10,000 or more in local, and a lot of businesses, the majority of businesses that we're aware of did apply for PPP loans, and whether you had that forgiven or not is not a qualification here. You are eligible to still apply if you have received a PPP loan. And the uses of this grant is flexible with spending to support those losses that you previously incurred. For the B2B hotels, through this program, applications are eligible to receive grant funding of up to $1,500 per hotel room in the establishment. As part of the program's focus, is supporting jobs. 80% of the grant funding received is required to be spent on payroll costs for the upcoming year, with the remaining 20% on a broad business expenses. To be eligible, we must be an independently owned and operated non-for-profit corporation or limited liability corporation, partnership or sole proprietorship authorized to conduct business in the state of Illinois, or a nonprofit operation in Illinois and register as a 501c organization. Very similar, exactly the same as the B2B restaurants. And similar to that as well, as must have begun operations prior to March 12, 2020 and maintain active operations in Illinois at time of application. You must be operating a hotel, which includes but is not limited to inns, motels, tours, homes or courts, lodging houses, rooming houses, retreat centers, conference centers, and hunting lodges. Very important for this program is that short-term rentals, including vacation rentals, defined as a single-family dwelling or a residential dwelling unit in a multi-unit structure that is rented for a fee for less than 30 consecutive days, such as those commonly listed via Airbnb or VRBO, are not eligible. And then for B2B arts, this program will provide grants ranging from $5,000 to up to $250,000 to concert and theater venues, performing or presenting arts organizations, art education organization, museums, and cultural heritage organizations in Illinois. It is intended for those who have experienced business interruptions or adverse conditions due to the COVID-19 pandemic and have been in operation in Illinois since prior to March 12th of 2020 remain in operation. Again, you must have experienced a loss in earned or contributed revenue of at least $5,000, which is very similar to the B2B restaurants. And you must be in operation in one of the following industries. This would include independent live venue operators, performing or presenting arts, arts education, museum, or cultural heritage organizations. So there are definitions for each of the industries, for each of the independent live venue operators, the performing and presenting arts, and then through those definitions to define if you qualify under those categories and eligible to apply. Here shortly on the next page, there is a link. We will send the link out that where you can find that information on those definitions from the DCO's website for the Back to Business, or you can go to the ilbusinessnavigators.com, and we have those definitions where you can download the eligibility requirements on our website as well. For the purpose of today's webinar and coming up on this hour timeline and ensuring that we have enough time for people to ask questions and to review questions. I'm not going to dive into those definitions, but if you have any questions, do reach out to us, submit. We have a submit questions on the website for the ilbusinessnavigators.com. We have our contact info on there. Just give us a call. We'll be more than happy to guide you through that process and try to determine that eligibility for the creative arts. And then just to note, you are eligible to receive prior state relief funding. If so, your grant would be based on the 2021 losses versus compare your 2019 to 2020 for the creative arts program. Here for the state information sessions, we did overlap this unintentionally, but did overlap this webinar today with a few webinars that the state DCO was getting ready to or currently engaged with. So they had an English language webinar covering these programs at 10 o'clock this morning. And then I'm assuming currently in their Spanish language webinar as well. That started at 11. If you go to the website that's on this here, and we'll send out the link, or if you just Google DCO B2B, you'll be able to find this dco.illinois.gov/smallbizassistant/B2B.html. I'm sure the recordings from these presentations will be on there, that if you joined us today that you're missing those. And then also day after the portal opens, Thursday, April 6th at 2 p.m. You can sign up and register for an information session there. So we have hit the 1 hour time frame, which is all right. Hope that you continue to join us. We have a lot of questions that have came in, and we're going to go ahead and jump into the Q&A session. And let's see. So first up, we had a question in the chat from Angela Griffin that Sean, you did answer a little earlier, but to ensure that that question is hit, makes the recording, make sure that that answer got out to everybody that may view this afterwards, and that the chat is not in the recording. Can we go ahead and ask it? So Angela, if you want to mute yourself and go ahead and ask as being a part of the panelists here.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, he sufficiently answered the question. I was just curious from a lender's perspective, does the collateral that's offered by the borrower have to cover the state 100% once the collateral's been discounted? Or was the state willing to make a loan that's not fully collateralized? The term under collateralized in the presentation just made me think that maybe the state does consider those borrowers and will make those loans. And it sounds like they will. So that's terrific.
Yep. And thanks for that question, Angela. So yeah, for our Advantage Illinois side, it does kind of go back to, the businesses that are applying for this. they have some sort of concern, there's some sort of issue, there's just something that a bank can't do 100%. So we do see quite frequently collateral shortfalls. Some banks approach that differently, because this program, we can never tell a bank what they can or cannot do per se. I mean, it still has to fall within compliance and legality, but they still have their own banking principles and practices. So when we look at a collateral shortfall, that is something that we're okay with. We let our leadership know, we let what we call our committee know, once we're talking about that project for approval. So we do see it quite frequently, whether that's real estate, a real estate issue, maybe they don't have enough equipment or like assets. It's kind of all across the board, not just like a real estate collateral piece. Yep, thanks for that question.
Awesome. And continuing with you, Sean, and maybe appropriate after answering that one is really, how do people get started? So if somebody's interested in the Advantage Illinois program, what's their first steps?
Yeah, great question, Courtney. So I always recommend the first step is honestly to look at the list of approved lenders that we have on our website, and just kind of see, if you recognize any of those banks. Look at like the location that they are, see if there's any that you recognize, again, from driving to and from work every day or just whatever. Look to see if you have an existing relationship with them. Look to see, hey, actually, I already work with this bank. Perfect. You might already have an in. So that's there's really no right or wrong way to do this program, though. If you hear from me or Bob or somebody else on like a presentation much like this, and you reach out to us directly, that's okay too. But we will have to refer you back to a bank regardless. Because again, participation loan, we don't give the money directly. But we will be happy to be your first point of contact, maybe answer, generic questions you have, maybe just to make sure you would fit from our side within the program. But then we would kind of get you, pointed in the right direction, get on with the banks.
Awesome. Is that the same difference for somebody that's refinancing as well?
Yeah, same concept. We don't, no right or wrong way on coming over to us. Feel free to reach out. We'll kind of direct you. But yeah, same thing for refinance. We still have to go back to a bank regardless. So again, sometimes it is just good to start with them first. But no, we'll be here to answer any questions you may have along the process.
Awesome. And as part of the follow-up, so next week you'll receive a link to the recording for this webinar. You'll see the PowerPoint slides that were ran through this morning. But then, Sean, let's get a copy of that list for the participation banks, and we can send that as well. And any of the links to the state's programs as well will include in that webinar too. So hopefully the follow-up information provides you with everything that you need to be well prepared to move forward with any of these programs. And Sean, being that you're first, the majority of the questions that came in first did come to you, and one that I'm interested in, and know that you guys talk with banks that are not yet participating in this program, and to effectively pitch it to them and see if there's interest in participating. What is your number one reason why a bank should participate?
It's going to sound like two, but it is one response. It's twofold. It's less risk on the bank side, which in turn means more capital to the borrower side. If you think about horses, for example, blinders, right? If you got a horse's training, sometimes they put the blinders on them. Banks are very much that same concept. Banks have to make sure that they are being profitable, that their return on investment or their assets are making the board of directors happy, or whomever they may or may not report to. So banks have their internal processes regardless. Now, a credit union may be different than a microfinance lender, which may be different than a depository bank, much like a Chase, US Bank, City Financial, whatever. So that's why that's the number one reason. A lot of the banks that we work with are community banks. They're neighborhood banks. They are more conservative by nature because they have to be to remain solvent. So by us coming in and taking that risk away, taking some of that risk away from them, that allows them to say, hey, we've got this ice cream company that's been a staple in this community for 45 years, COVID hit or just whatever, we can't give them a loan because the borrower had a bankruptcy 8 years ago.
Mhm.
Okay, that's where we come in. Perfect. We can come in, help the ice cream shop get this loan. The bank still helps out that staple in the community while also taking less risk on their loan profile or portfolio. So that's kind of the long-winded answer to an easy question. It really is kind of a twofer.
I like it. I like it. Next question that came in for Kayla on the EDGE program. We've seen and heard from Sean a lot of growth in the Advantage Illinois over recent years, and recognizing that the EDGE program is an excellent program, but it's not a new one by any means. Is it well utilized here within the state?
Yes. Yeah. And actually we post all of those agreements on the state website. So, anytime you could see that information at the very bottom of DCEO's website. But yeah, it is. We have a lot of projects that come through and we're working on them every day.
Awesome. I think it's an excellent tool, and very appreciative of the changes, the adaptations to it, if you will, to make it easier to utilize and better access to it. That's tremendous, and only a huge benefit for all parties. The eligibility criteria for EDGE, are you able to note that?
The eligibility
For
you
a
mean,
business to apply?
as far as like the investment amounts, or
Yes, investment
okay.
amounts or job creation, job retention, what's all tied to it?
Yeah. So as far as the minimum investments, for if you have fewer than 100 employees, there's actually no minimum investment required, but you can't get a tax credit for, you have to have something, right? You can't, so whatever that investment amount is that you state that you're making, that's the amount of tax credit that you're eligible to get. So, companies are going to come in making some sort of investment.
Yes.
But if it's 100, if a company has 100 or fewer worldwide employees, the job creation requirement is the lesser of 5% of worldwide employment or 50 new jobs. And then if they have more than 100 worldwide employees, it is the lesser of 10% of worldwide employment or 50 new jobs. And the investment minimum is 2.5 million if you have over 100 worldwide employees.
Awesome. Thank you for that quick eligibility criteria. And then you had noted there is a list of what qualifies under the but-for. Is that something that's just internal, or is that something that can be provided?
Yeah, we usually provide it to companies whenever we're engaged with them to make sure that they know upfront, what could constitute a but-for. But yeah, we're actually revising that document right now. And so whenever it's available, certainly if those that are in the economic development sector, happy to provide that. So that way, when you're out having conversations, that you're aware of what would blow a but-for.
Awesome. So we'll most certainly follow up with you once that's revised. And then had another question from Angela come in about REV. It's what type of documentation is required for the company to prove the employee's job duties are related to the REV project? And then does the program application provide a form, or is the company required to provide internal job description information? Now, Sean had noted that one. Kayla, you presented on it. Whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, I'll go, and then Caleb, if you want to add anything.
Sure.
But yeah, another great question, Angela. When much like EDGE and REV, it's going to be kind of the same answer here to an extent. But when a company comes in and does our application process, a lot of times we are already doing what's called like intake calls. That's obviously, just like meeting with a company, understanding their needs, understanding if they have like sites that are specified, or if they have like a specific need, maybe like it's a railway, waterway, what have you. So we're having, excuse me, we're having a lot of these intake calls initially. And within those initial calls, we ask obviously probing questions. What's the capital investment? What's the job creation? What's your worldwide headcount? What's your baseline numbers, right? So all of that goes into the initial groundwork of it. Once we actually get a project to an application phase though, and our applications are available online, but for Revs specifically, we have a lot of questions built in around what we call project overview initially. So that's what I notated in my response. So I'll cover that really quick. So the project overview can include like location decision, construction start time, occupancy, full employment, etc. We ask about current full-time employees, obviously to get that baseline number, but we try to understand hiring ramp up. You know, not every company comes in and says, we're going to create 1,000 jobs in 1 month. You know, sometimes they say we're going to create 50 jobs here, 250, 500, you know, so on and so forth. So we're understanding pretty much every caveat or revolving conversation about employees. You then think about Rev, and again, Kayla did a great job covering some of those legislative changes. We took that word primarily out. So now when we are looking at these companies' applications, we're able to say if they have a maintenance operator, we actually have a code that lines up to like the BLS or the IDES data. So then we can confirm, are they paying 120%, you know, based on that average wage. So I'm talking a lot for a reason, because I'm just to make the point of how much I'm talking is how much we ask about employees. They're required to fill out what we call Section B, which is their hiring plan. That talks about their commitment to the recruiting, the ramping up of the project site, the positions. So again, my point of talking a lot is to show that there's a lot that goes into understanding what types of positions they're bringing, what type of positions they're creating, or what type of positions they're retaining. So long-winded answer, but you kind of, I think, needed that to understand that there's a lot of conversations that go into employees, especially considering, my last comment, these are tax incentive programs. So a lot of what they're receiving from us at the state is based on the amount of people they're hiring or retaining. So we have to do a really deep dive to make sure that those employees are applicable and can be a qualified applicant, so to speak. So sorry, that was long-winded, but that's why. Kayla, I don't know if you want to add anything to that from your side,
Well,
but
to the qualified applicant and the employee. So you require information that identifies who that employee is. Is that
we don't
rightfully say?
We don't go on the application level. We don't go into specifics about, you know, Sean Pritchard holds the position of operator inspector. We don't go into that detail. What we do is we say, how many like operators do you have? And then they'll like 20, 30, whatever. Where the data about employees specifically comes into play is what we call the back end. Same for Edge and same for Rev, that once these companies have made their capital investment, they've made their job commitment hiring numbers, they then get what's called an AUP, agreed upon procedures, by an accounting firm. That accounting firm confirms that they've made those commitments. Then they are then eligible to start coming in for their incentives. So when they send it to my team behind the scenes for Edge and Rev and others, our team is going in and they're looking at ADP payroll reports for is now what you're talking about, specifically all 1,547 employees or whatever it is. So then they're seeing Sean Pritchard's an operator. They're seeing how long I've been employed by the company. There's my W-2 wages, my W-2 withholding. So we get all of that in a secured message filing system.
Does that include a social security number?
It does not.
Okay.
No, not in every case. If it does, we redact all of we redact any PII anyways, just for security. But yeah, a lot of ours is password protected, and a lot of different securities go into that. But that's when we're going to see more about the line item about each individual employee, whether they're new or retained.
Awesome.
So it's a lot. It's a long answer, but it's not. It's because it's a more in-depth question, I think. But it was a great question.
So can I just stop you quickly? And I really
Sure.
appreciate all that information. And if this isn't the place to have this conversation, let's have it offline. But
Sure.
the reason I'm asking, and all of that is helpful and useful, but the reason I'm asking is more from like a marketing perspective for those of us in economic development, because when we're talking to our companies, it's fairly easy to help them understand and for us to understand if they qualify based on what their investment's going to be and how many jobs they're going to create. It's that middle part of the process that you described, where now that they're in and now that they're committed and now that they're moving through the process and maybe about to get their tax credit, now they need to do that middle application cycle paper processing portion, which is related to the employees and the employee job descriptions, and then back to that word primarily. So what I was kind of looking for is, when I'm marketing it, how do I go to the business owners and their HR directors and say, okay, we know you're eligible, but once you're in the middle of this application, you're going to need to verify and prove that the employees that you're counting are primarily engaged in the project and that it's related to the rev part of the project, as opposed to that maintenance person that you described. Maybe 75% of his day is not maintaining a piece of equipment that's producing a part for the electric vehicle industry, but 25% of his day is. Like, is there a guideline? So when we're talking to them, we can say,
Yeah.
This is what you need to be sure you're going to be able to prove in the middle part of this application cycle.
Yeah, that's a great, no, it does. And, I think that the best answer to this question, I do think it's going to be an offline response, not that others shouldn't be able to hear, but it's more because, these legislative changes, we feel strongly about. We're very excited about them. We think that it's really giving us in Illinois an equal playing field to some of our bordering states with some of the programs that they have, or some of the amendments or changes that they've done. So to answer your question specifically, though, I'll probably need to think about that just a little bit more, maybe get with Kayla and some others, because we are still kind of going through internally on how we want to market some of these changes. So I think that, and Kayla, I don't know if you want to add anything here, if you have a separate thought, but I think that's why I said I think we might need to circle back up to think about holistically, once all of these changes are completely done, which they really are. I mean, we just got to clean up some stuff on the internal side, but I think that's how we can approach, like, how's the best way to market this, especially for these rev companies, especially as we're trying to recruit more rev companies. What's the best way to use exactly what you just said, Angela, that how are we going to classify these employees? So unfortunately, and sorry for the group, but I'd like to circle back on that one when I have a little more time to marinate on it.
Definitely understood and appreciate that, to be able to gather your thoughts. And what I would suggest is, as the group, the Business Navigator Alliance as a whole, we're primarily economic developers throughout South Central, Southeastern Illinois. Let's continue this conversation as a group, and then allow us that opportunity to disseminate that information to our stakeholders, to those that have vested interest in economic development throughout our community. So
absolutely,
awesome.
Sounds great.
Awesome. So we got about 10 more minutes. We've got some more questions. We will have a hard stop at noon, but to continue on, and the next one that came in was, can you apply for multiple programs? So we listed quite a few, and maybe even to suggest Rev here, but to give an example, can somebody run through or apply for the Rev program and then leverage Advantage Illinois in addition to that too? Or how do these intertwine or not intertwine?
Yeah, great question. So that one, for sake of timing, I'm going to give the short response.
Yes.
In a lot of cases, yeah, you can, quote unquote, like double dip between a couple state programs. But it's all going to depend on which ones you're looking at utilizing. So for Advantage Illinois, because it's not a grant system or a grant program, because it's not a tax incentive program, you can rely on Advantage Illinois if you are an EDGE company or EDGE applicant or a REV applicant. You can use Advantage Illinois that way. But again, reminder, this is a program that requires banks. So we still have to get a bank regardless if you're going through Rev, EDGE, or another state program. That unfortunately doesn't matter. Where it can become problematic is if you cannot have like an EDGE and a Rev at the same time. In some cases, you can't have multiple tax incentives credit programs at the same time. Kayla mentioned in one of her slides that one of the legislative changes that we did was being able to make a company that was an EDGE recipient to allow them to convert to a Rev agreement. Rev has more years, has that option that Kayla went over for the option for renewals. So it's more, in some cases, it's better financially for the company to switch over, to convert. But again, you can't have both an edge at the Rev at the same time. We also have to be careful about some grant programs because of, certain GATA requirements. You got to be careful sometimes with GATA versus some federal requirements on grants. So quick answer is yes and no. We would probably want to know more specifics on what kind of programs you're thinking about, which Courtney did a great job with the Rev and Advantage Illinois example. But going further than that would probably have to be conversations with the respective person.
Now, for Sean, obviously well informed on these programs, or Kayla as well. For Rev, is that only new projects or a new business that would be coming in, an existing business that's pivoting or bringing something in, or is it applicable to ongoing operations? So somebody's already manufacturing components in this industry.
If they are making an investment, of at least 2.5 million, is that lowest one that we talked about today. So, probably pointing to a new project, maybe a new line, something like that, where they're going to be making an investment and retaining jobs or creating new jobs. Yes, yeah, it's definitely for existing operations.
Awesome. And a couple more questions here. Sean, you had noted about Advantage Illinois and with the difference between that and SBA, you touched on a little bit with the fees associated to it. So a question came in that can you have an SBA loan and Advantage Illinois loan at the same time? Can the project have granted it's a participation loan program, but can you use SBA and Advantage Illinois?
You can. It becomes a little tricky. We do it a lot, but essentially then it's not just Advantage Illinois and an SBA loan. It's Advantage Illinois, SBA loan, and that bank. So it then becomes like a three-headed piece, if you will. When we talk about SBA and Advantage Illinois, the overlap or being able to work together, the easiest way to describe that is we cannot be used for the same funding purpose. Quick example is if you have a project where you're buying a piece of property and some equipment. SBA can do the real estate, and then we'll work with the bank on the equipment. So it's dividing and conquering, so to speak, but we can't intermingle funds. And SBA has different requirements on like guarantees, on collateral coverage percentages. So we absolutely can work with the SBA in conjunction, but it has to be used for different purposes.
Understood. Thank you. And then, well, for Advantage Illinois, you had noted 10-year term for Advantage Illinois, and then FAME a 7-year term. Are you utilizing this for acquisition of property? Are you able to amortize that out further, keeping the same term, and then with just a balloon, or how does that work?
Yep, exactly. So 10 years for standard is our max. So it doesn't mean we're going to do a 10-year loan. We'll work with the bank on that. Might be a 5-year term loan. Anyway. So yes, we do amortize further. So if you have a 10-year loan, you might have a 25-year amortization schedule. What that means is, and Courtney just hit the nail right on the head, is we have to figure out after year 10 what that business is going to do. So the options that we have, and we talked to the bank before all of this, it's in advance, we have to have it done and approved. But option number one is a balloon payment. So that borrower can either make a balloon payment to pay off the entirety of the loan or just the Advantage Illinois section or participation. Second option is the bank refinances the debt themselves and they pay us off. Some banks don't like to commit 10 years in advance that they're going to refinance debt, but some banks do it. And then the third option is basically just saying like, are we going to do like a 5-year interest rate change, or are we going to have years where we go back and we look at the status or productivity of the loan? So those are the three options we usually kind of offer up to banks. But yes, so to answer your question, we can amortize longer than 10 years. We piggyback and or match the bank. So if they say we're going to do a 5-year term and a 5-year amortization schedule, that's what it is. We make it easy. One note, one loan. That's it. So that's the answer to that question.
Awesome. And then Kayla, for enterprise zones, question came in with HIB and enterprise zones is, and two of them come in, but maybe two in the same. Who to contact was the for enterprise zones, and then where are zones located? So do you have, does the state have a map that identifies where the zones are located and identifies who to contact within that?
We do, and happy to follow up with that information if you want to send that out to
Yes, please.
to those afterwards. But right now, Ben Denny is the Edge program manager for Enterprise Zone. And yes, there is an interactive map on our website. You can just put the address in there and it'll take you right to it and see if you're in a zone or not. And you can actually expand out so you can kind of see where the closest one is. There's also a list of the contacts for the local zone administrators on that list as well. So if you're interested in contacting the zone administrator, if you are in a zone or in a nearby zone, then that information is available.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And last question, we got 2 minutes left. Last question come in, the portal for the back to business grant. So creative arts, restaurants, hotels, that is online. It's an online application. That portal will open April 5th. And if you click on that portal link on the website current, it just takes you to the page for the portal, but it's not open yet. If you click on that link from the ilbusinessnavigators.com, sends you to the same place. As soon as that portal is open, it will become live and you are able to apply. But those that got a little excited and went in to click that portal, it's not open yet, but we'll be here soon. And with that, we're going to conclude today's webinar. Much appreciated to Kayla and to Sean for educating us today on a variety of different programs and opportunities really for not only local businesses, but our communities as well. And to try to strive for economic development and build our local economy. So great presentations, wonderful information. We hit you with a lot of questions too, and you're able to jump on that. We will follow up with you guys for a few additional information and send a copy of this recording out to everybody next week, along with the slides and with any additional questions that may come in, we'll try to answer too. And we hope you join us next month, last Thursday of the month, April. I should have wrote that down. April 27th, we've got Zach Kennedy from the University of Illinois Extension Office and going to discuss data for decision makers. So very excited about that one and hope that you continue to join us and much appreciated for everybody that did join us today and that stuck in past the hour time frame as well. And hope that you found today's presentation, today's webinar informative. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out and get a hold of us. Thank you. Have a good day.